Hi everyone, in this video we're going to go over how to defend against the Scholar's Mate. Scholar's Mate is also known as a lightning attack, the form of checkmate, and it is actually quite easy to defend against if you know what the opponent wants to do. There are some tricks and traps white can try to do, and we will go over that. Let me show you a simple version of this. So white brings a bishop to here, and if black moves a knight to f6, white has a checkmate like queen f7. This is actually not the best way to start the game for white because when you start with the queen is going to be the most valuable piece on the board we can capture. So whatever attacks the queen, we have to move it away, which will cause us to lose a lot of tempo. Let's flip the board and analyze this from black's perspective. Usually white starts with queen h5 to do the Scholar's Mate. Now the queen is attacking these three pawns, but really it wants to attack these two. Now in this position, without the bishop on c4, white cannot really capture on f7, right? Because if they try to capture, we can just capture back with the king. So really what white wants to capture is the pawn on e5, and we should protect this pawn. There are multiple ways you can protect this pawn. We prefer knight c6 because not only we're defending this pawn, but we're also going to be developing our knight. After the opponent brings the bishop to c4, now they actually want to do a checkmate on f7 by capturing with the queen. This is when we're going to push the pawn to g6. You can also try to do something like queen e7 or queen f6 to protect this pawn, but pawn g6 is going to be a little bit more aggressive, attacking the opponent's queen, and the queen usually goes back, but it can go to this f3 square. After it goes to f3, it still wants to do a checkmate on f7, and we need to prevent this again. It is going to be a very simple knight f6 development move. We're going to be blocking the opponent's queen from reaching f7. And our knight is defended by the queen, so they can't really capture this. Now, there's not really more tricks or traps after this, but there's something important we need to do. Since we push this pawn to g6, these dark squares are actually going to be weakened because of that. And in order to support those dark squares, we need to move the bishop to g7. This is what we call a fianchetto. Moving the bishop on the longest diagonal is something that we like to do, and it also supports this knight. After this, we can do a castle. Blocking is super duper safe, and the game continues like this. Now, if the opponent brings the bishop to g5, they actually are pinning our knight, and now 1-2 pieces attack, and only 1-2 pieces protect. Now that is equal, however, there is a move that white can do in the future, which is knight d5 to put pressure on this pinned piece. And in order to prevent this attack, we can actually do this knight d4 move. Knight d4 move is quite an interesting move. It is attacking two things, and we actually want to do a fork on c2. There's one square for the queen to go, and that's going to be at d1. And now the queen is no longer putting pressure on the knight, so there's no more traps based on the Scholar's Mate. This is exactly how we can defend against the Scholar's Mate, but let's actually look into some traps that can happen. Now, again, when the queen comes to here, it is attacking on f7. However, they don't want to capture on f7 until this bishop comes out. So if we mess up the order of the moves for black, and instead we push the pawn to g6, white can actually do a very good fork. They can bring the queen to e5 to attack our rook and attack the king. And we're going to be losing this rook. Sometimes we might also be tempted to move the knight to f6, but again, this is going to be a mistake. Our pawn on e5 was hanging. White can capture that for free. That's why we'll move the knight to c6. If they bring the bishop to c4, they want to capture this pawn. Don't do a move like knight f6. Even though this is attacking the queen, the white queen doesn't want to stay on this square anyway. They want to bring it to do a checkmate. So let's go over this one more time. After bishop goes to c4, we're going to be moving the pawn to g6. Queen can go to f3. And we are going to block the checkmate threat with knight f6. If they develop the knight, we are going to move this dark squared bishop to g7 to help support those dark squares. And then we can do a castle. If the opponent tries to pin your knight, again, you can do knight d4, which is a great attack. It's going to be a double attack. Or you can try to make that bishop go away with pawn h6. If they go back, you can even push the pawn to g5. This is basically how we can defend against a scholar's mate if the opponent brings a queen first in the game. There are some variations to this, like white can try to move the bishop to c4 first, doing the bishop's opening. Now they're attacking f7, and they can also transpose this into the Italian opening as well. But if they try to do bishop c4, you can move your knight to f6, and now the queen can't really come to h5 anyway. So by developing our knight, we are going to be preventing this checkmate, which is going to be a very good idea for black to do. We typically don't like to play this again as white because we are trying to bring the queen very early in the game, and since the queen is a very valuable piece, we're going to be losing so much time moving the queen back and forth. Alright, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. We're going to post more videos that supplement your chess knowledge.